outside of all of this that data professionals have to get to and see the meaning.
Those are the kind of guys that will be early adopters with data literacy programs.
Analytics, storytelling that you do need to bring into the curriculum, that they are as close to the network of driving that culture.
So Jordan, wanted to ask you just, we're constantly working on our curriculum. How have you seen data literacy change from when you started this movement? What is it, 2017, 2018, somewhere there?
2016.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't believe it's been so long.
Yeah. So we're constantly working on the curriculum.
Yeah.
Because things are changing, updating all the time. Have you seen it from your perspective?
If the data literacy I started with all the way back in 2016, if I never did anything with it, I wouldn't be sitting here with you.
Yeah.
Like I would have been bypassed, right, by those that were shifting, moving. Like we've been talking, like this is why people need to be investigating your courses, is because those data literacy courses that are stuck and not evolving as technology evolve, they're the ones that will lose.
Yeah.
So data literacy has shifted greatly. It shifted from when we started building just this, and not ambiguous, but here, we'll build this learning and this learning and this learning. Oh, we need a framework. Okay, let's build a framework. Oh, it's not a one size fits all. Okay, you got to do this. Oh, AI came to be. What happened to data literacy? Oh, it got more important. So you have to evolve everything like your training is doing.
Yeah.
That consistent movement, consistent innovation, that means you're staying as close to, it's hard to stay on top of all the trends happening, but at least you know that you can trust the work you're doing is working to shift with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've just introduced AI fundamentals into
Yeah.
our foundational level. The next step is bringing it into the consumer and the power level. So the product iterations are quite phenomenal. You know, we had version 1, we had version 1.1, version 1.2, we're about to release version 2.0, there's vision for 3, but the content is, it's coming, and it's ever evolving. So
It's like when I write books, it's like I had my idea for my next book, and then because of one conversation this week here in South Africa, it's like, can I add that to the book? And yes, I think I can.
Yeah.
So now that book just got better or bigger. I don't know what the term is, because now you're attaching something new to it.
Yeah.
And that if you're doing things right, it means you are consistently changing with everything.
Yeah.
Just you travel the world, you speak to so many people, thought leaders in their field. You're a thought leader in the field of data analytics and data literacy. What are some of those trends, some of those conversations? What is emerging out of that that's interesting for 2024?
One very interesting thing is the conversations have changed, but they haven't, if that makes sense. Meaning companies know they need to do this. We were talking earlier on how we're now seeing the awareness is still there, and the awareness phase isn't even over yet. What people are struggling to do is, how do you build the right execution around this? And I think that's that next iteration of where things are going, is the same conversation. That data is so weird in the sense that 15 years ago, the same problems that we're talking about today are the same things we're trying to solve for. How do you properly use a data scientist? Who freaking knows? How do you properly put in place good data governance? We're not doing it. How do you build a good data strategy? Well, we're still struggling. It's so fascinating to me that for whatever reason, and I wonder if that's because the way that education was set up in this space was the data professional was really taught data fundamentals, but business was left out. And then from the business perspective, data fundamentals were left out. So you've got some people that know how to connect these pieces together, but a lot don't. And so they don't know how to bring value to this. They don't know how to set up the right framework for a strategy. They don't know how to, data governance, oh my goodness, should be such a fundamental thing that every company is doing. It's still not there, right? You want to harness AI, you better have good data. I think AI has done a good job of redirecting that.
Yeah.
But the conversations, yes, things have evolved, but it's almost as if, it's like here's a real world example. One of the fundamental goals that people set in the new year is, I want to lose weight. That's been around for who knows how long, and people still struggle with it. It's almost like data is the same. Now, the one thing that I think can help alleviate that is the better the structure is around your strategy and your framework, the better the things will turn out. So, for example, take two people at New Year's, both want to lose weight. This person puts weekly goals in place, weekly targets to hit. You're not going to be perfect. And this person just has the aspiration to do it. Which one of those do you think is going to be more successful? And the key, though, is the investment that a person makes too. Aspiration, you might not put any money behind it. The person who structures it is willing to say, you know what, I'm willing to buy a car at X amount of dollars. Why am I not willing to put X amount of dollars into me? So I'm going to do that. I think organizations need to be the same. You're going to have those who have all these aspirations, those who take those aspirations and structure it. Which company is going to succeed, right? And the final thing I'll say about this is the one thing that has to be communicated with the trends that are going on, there's no easy button. You're not going to buy AI and it solves it all. You're not going to buy a data governance tool and it solves. No offense to all of us, data literacy people, you're not going to buy a data literacy course and that solves it all. That could be a good catalyst too, because if you increase your data literacy, hopefully everything we're talking about makes more sense. But you still have to execute, you have to put structure, all of it.
So you and I were involved in that conversation with the prospective client, saying, how do I sell this to my executives and get the buy-in from the executive point of view? And we've been talking in the partnership thing around bringing a workshop type series into the market that engages executives to help them understand the value proposition of rolling out a data literacy program in the organization. So that's an exciting...
It's one of the biggest keys to data literacy is do the senior leaders, they probably get it and say, oh yeah, we know we need this. So show me what you're doing about it. There's the why. There's 3 tiers you need to look at from a data literacy program. There's all the learners, which is, the majority of the people, it's the learners. There's mid-level leadership because they have to know principles plus know how to lead this group. But probably the key demographic is that senior leader. That's the top tier. They can say it all they want, but show me. And I think it sounds funny when you say it this way, but show me with your wallet. What are you, and show me that you're walking the walk. If you can get their data literacy at such a level that they're like, we have to do this. Here's the budget, here's your time, hire people for it, invest in companies like yours to do it, boom. But you have to have that senior leadership buy-in. Or the workshop I did while here in South Africa this week, it's interesting the organic conversation, how much of it turned to getting senior leaders to understand and buy in.
So what we've seen over the last 3 years, there was the initial awareness phase. So people intuitively knew there's a problem. They couldn't put a name to it.
Yeah.
They couldn't understand what that gap in adoption is. Why are people not using this great stuff we had? And then once you articulated it, they understood it, and they went, yes, we need that. And then there was almost the next phase of getting broader buy-in. And there we saw sort of 2 things branch off. People went, we are actually going to 3 things. We're going to pause because we're busy with the data governance, we're busy with cleaning our data, or we're busy with dashboarding, but we should get back to this. And we're starting to see some people loop back to that now. The second group went, yes, we want to do this, however, we need to put it in the budget for next year. So there was almost a delay. Those guys have now gone through the initial pilots and they're starting to ramp up. And then there was a third group that said, we recognize it, thank you, we're going to build our own program, which is also a legitimate strategy. Some, put in a lot of effort, time and money to build it, and they've got a really bespoke, custom program for their organization. But we do find that's almost aimed at the data analyst level. It's not for the business user as much. They're almost trying to teach business people technical basic skills. And there's other dimensions around data literacy, communication, creative thinking, advanced analytics, storytelling that you do need to bring into the curriculum, not just the skills. You need the knowledge, you need the skills, and you need the soft skills. Your thoughts on that? Are you seeing similar trends in the rest of the world around adoption?
What's interesting to me is I think you're nailing it. And But the key is, I would say all of that, it's great. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. I think where businesses struggle to really get this to take off, and data professionals, and data literacy leads, you get so excited, you know that this needs to happen. But where businesses need to really get, this comes back to senior leaders and their ability to understand what it takes to do this, is do they have the ability to really prioritize which data initiative, you can't boil the ocean. So which data initiative should I start with? Is it starting here? Is it starting there? Is it starting here? Can you do 2 or 3 in parallel? And I don't think that's bad. Sometimes I think what needs to happen is, let's say this group here, we're invited to go to a company. They know they want to do this, but they're like, oh my gosh, our data governance is a mess. This has got to be 3-6 months down the road. Imagine if we sat there and said, what if we can help you speed that up? We will take some of that work on, and instead of 3 months to get your data governance, it only takes 1. I think sometimes as data professionals, data literacy leads, you sacrifice some of your program to build a better relationship so that your program can succeed more. So in the workshop I did this week here in South Africa, the conversation at one point was talking about different priorities. We have, and it isn't even necessarily data priorities. Imagine going to the chief marketing officer for a company, and that chief marketing officer just had to restructure their organization and lay off 20%. And you're trying to sell to a CMO data literacy. Not the good timing. So there's an aspect of data literacy that I think AI may have forced a little bit, or it's always been there, and that's the emotional intelligence, EQ side of all of this, that data professionals have to get to, and senior leaders do, and data literacy leads do, that says, I need to be able to understand their whole big picture to see where it fits. Imagine going to a company and saying, you know what? They know you need data literacy, but let's wait 6 months. Here's why. And then they're like, oh my gosh, you're not pushing the sale. You're understanding my need. So when last week, before I came to South Africa, I went to Nike's headquarters in Oregon in the United States. And the first workshop or day I spent with them was all the way back in maybe April. I think we were going to bring me back in May. They had big changes come through. I didn't go back until September because the restructuring that took place was big. Many people lost jobs, I believe. So the mood and atmosphere is not the right timing for me to go in and do a workshop. It might not have as much value. Here we are in September. A couple months have been removed. A month has been removed. Maybe the attitudes are shifting. So to your point, I think every one of those is valid. And the word I joke is the word is depends. And it really does depend on the situation. But data professionals and senior leaders have to have a good grasp on emotional intelligence, data intelligence, and AI intelligence at this point, and how do you fit these things into the bigger picture? Some companies may really be excited. We have to have the ability to tell them, this is 6 months down the road. Let's chat, and in the meantime, how can we help you achieve these other priorities?
Interesting how you speak about the role of executive leadership and how they're involved with the strategy and the implementation of these successful, let's call them data literacy projects, because from data that we've sampled within our database of assessments that we've taken, there's a big perception from our audience where they are saying that the level of data literacy at executive level most times could equal the workforce or sometimes be lower, right? So my question to you is, what have you seen from a leadership point of view where success is garnered by the ability of the executive to fully understand the initiative you're trying to deploy? So when I want to lead from the front, does it not actually mean that I have to know what the training is all about, believe in the training, be able to do the training myself at an executive level? And yes, we understand how busy these individuals are. Running boardrooms and executive meetings, EXCO, MANCO, and all of that comes with those positions. But how do you lead from the front if you're not actively boots on the ground, know what that project of data literacy is going to entail?
I think there's not a one-size-fits-all to data literacy, and I think we recognize that. But what is the data literacy needs of executives? Do they need to know quantitative versus qualitative, structured versus unstructured? They probably, if you're at an executive level, you've got some data literacy in you. It's going to be there. But their data literacy boils down to, do you know what the program is? Do you know why the program operates this way? Do you have the ability to interject and say, we need to do this slightly different? Your data literacy is understanding how data strategies are a part of the bigger picture. I don't need you to build the data strategy. Leave that to data leadership. But do you truly understand why? Do you understand the investment it takes? Do you understand why you as a senior leader need to walk the walk? You need to talk. You need to communicate. That's data literacy at the senior level. It's not the technical ins and outs that you might teach a new marketing analyst or something like that. It becomes, do you know the why behind this? Do you understand the program? And do you know what your role is to make sure this program succeeds? Because you can't just buy the program and ignore, right? People can see senior leaders that are not the ones that you trust. Now imagine, to your point, you have a senior leader that says, I'm going to join the learning. I want to be in there to see what you're learning so that I can lead you better with it. Imagine if they're sending out every month, here's the senior leaders newsletter or whatever, and there's a data literacy section that says, this is what I learned this month through data literacy. These are things that are going to motivate an organization to do it more versus, we bought a program, you all do that now. You need them to, that's a data literacy of a senior leader, is it's probably a lot of the squishy stuff. It's more of the people stuff, not any of the programs.
100%. And from that, what we can say is like that's the beginning of a successful data culture. Which is true, right? Where your executives may not be as close to the data sciences, right? But they are as close to the network of driving that culture within the organization successfully by understanding it better.
Yeah, culture, people and culture are your biggest roadblock for these things succeeding. You have to have a culture where people are willing to experiment. They're willing to speak up. They're willing to question things. Imagine if you have a senior leader who's like, I don't know this stuff. Teach me. I think people like to see senior leaders who are vulnerable, not the ones who are arrogant and never think they make a mistake. And so it's a big part of allowing that senior leader to say, I don't know. Let's question everything. Let's trust this process.
Some of the most successful data solutions that I've seen in the customer accounts that I've worked in, are when the middle layer management go, the executive's making a decision off of this dashboard, I better subscribe to that, or this report, or whatever the case is. And then all of a sudden, down the chain, everyone starts aligning to decision making and utilizing those insights coming out of those data solutions, because the executive was he doesn't, like you say, he doesn't need to know technically how it was built, but he's logging in every day, he's opening his dashboard, he's making his decisions and driving everything down below him through that. Now, those are the kind of guys that will be early adopters with their literacy programs and things like that, because they understand the benefits already. So those are the execs that drive success and ROI out of these investments.
Absolutely. And there's a key that you're talking about that I hope the data professionals pick up on. A good data professional is going to key into what data is my senior leader using. Okay. So now then a data literacy program can say, these are the data points they like. A good data literacy program and good data professionals, the audience is what matters, not my viewpoint. Like, how many people build a data visualization and a data story according to what they would like to hear versus according to what their audience needs to hear. Yeah. So to your point, if you're building data in a way that is feeding, number one, trust is one of the key concepts within data professionals' career. Do they trust my work? And if you continually build work that they're enjoying, that data professional it could be the best friend of the senior executive.
Yeah, so what you're alluding to there is what we teach in the critical thinking side, which is biases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Am I building through the lens that I have based on my biases this data product, or do I need to change those lenses because that's not necessarily in the benefit of the organization I'm working?
Well, and it's senior leaders, one of the massive pieces of data literacy for them should be their own bias too. Senior leaders a lot of times have years of experience, so they think they may know. You need a senior leader who's willing to say, you know what, we've done it this way for 20 years. Can you show me there's a different way? How many of them like that? How many of them like being challenged? It's hard. When I worked at American Express, we had a senior vice president change data in a slide that came from like our data science part of our team. Our VP raised their hand, if I remember the story right, and challenged her right in this meeting. You changed our slide. That's maybe not the appropriate time to challenge a senior vice president, right? Yeah. But that is a senior vice president whose lack of data literacy had her change the image, right? And so this is why data literacy is also maybe some humility for senior leaders to understand. I need to be able to say, we've been wrong on this for 10 years. Not that we knew it because we didn't have the data till now. Now that we have the data, let's change it.
Yeah, or even that things are changing, right? What was acceptable practice and a good way of doing things for a long time is rapidly changing now. So even I think a lot of senior leaders are struggling to keep pace with all of the change.
Absolutely.
You know, they're experts in their fields. They know the technologies they've used for the last 10, 15 years. And now there's this massive acceleration of new technologies, new ways of doing things, new tech channels. They have to transform their digital models, and you can't do it on old patterns. You're going to have to use data to guide you on that process.
So one of the stories that I like sharing is, a couple of years ago, we've been incumbent in an account, but one of the divisions we weren't participating in. Someone had built a solution for them. And one of our guys sat in a meeting and reviewed some of the calculations that were in the back end of delivering that report, whatever the case was, and found a significant flaw in the calculations. Just one of those things. He highlighted that to the senior leadership, and the executive sat back and said, okay, fine, there's a flaw in the calculation. It has an impact in terms of the numbers that have been reported to us, but the decision-making that we've been applying to that has been consistent over time. So I'm happy that the decisions were from the consistency point of view was solid.
Yeah.
Let's fix that problem and let's move forward. And that was just a great example of mature leadership. No one got fired or retrenched or whatever about it because mistakes do happen, right?
Yeah.
That was just a great example of
It's
mature leadership from a data perspective. Yeah.
Like I think there is a comfort in not sharing, oh my gosh, the data is showing us that we haven't been doing this right for 5 years. Mature leadership, going back to senior leaders' data literacy, is that's okay because we didn't know it was wrong. Or the other thing that we have to recognize is now that things are evolving, new evolutions will illuminate new things because we now have that information. Do we have the maturity? This is why emotional intelligence is coming in more, the empathy. No one's getting fired or anything.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're saying, you know what? It's fine. We didn't have this before. We do now. Let's pivot. And if that means it affects calculations, it affects things, change management is a big piece of data and analytics. What communication do you have? You could go to customers and say, guess what? We have new data coming through that is showing us we've been doing it this way. We can now pivot and go to here. Do you agree? Are you good with us doing this? And you communicate it and all that. But that's a part of that data literacy that says, I'm comfortable, we didn't have it before, we have it now, let's make decisions, let's go.
Yeah. Executive topic again. These executives have a lot of priorities coming at
Yep.
them, a lot of things people are asking them to do. The board is saying, what are we doing in AI? We want data sciences, we have to transform our business model and digitize. And so our jobs is to position data literacy in its proper place as part of the bigger solution, digital solution. But inevitably, you're going to come down to ROI discussion. Yeah. What is the return on this particular investment as opposed to this investment? What are some of the aspects of return on investment that we should be looking at and helping in building the business case?
So data is an interesting space when it comes to ROI because in a lot of cases, data is just a piece of a process. It's not the whole process, right? So the example we can use is a churn model or predictive analytics around closing sales. Let's go with predictive analytics around closing sales. If you build a good model that turns out 10% more closing of sales, you can see a determinant value that sits there. But a lot of the work is indeterminate value. So a part of the data literacy at the senior level is teaching where does data give us an actual ROI value that you can put a dollar amount to. Or here a rand amount to, right? And then also teaching them that sometimes the data stories and data visualizations are just data points that help drive a new decision. And so then you're measuring the value of that decision. Data is just a piece of that, though. So you have to teach, there is ROI. right? It could be predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics. The investment cut productivity hours in a better way, went from 20 to 10 hours. So you've got hours of productivity. Data professionals have to get really, really good at being able to communicate value. You can't just build things that take 3 months and there's no way to measure anything from it. You could lose investment very quick that way, because what does a CFO and a CEO want to know? Bottom line, what did this do for us?
Saving money or making
It's
money.
saving money or making money. So can we get really good at building use cases? Now, one thing that can help through all of this is when we think about what a data strategy is. A data strategy is, how are you using data to support the business strategy? And if you can show the business strategy is these 5 goals, here's how data was used in goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're showing them, this is what data did to support this. We were successful on all 5. And so if we tie everything back to the business, that's an easier sell. But we talked earlier about the siloing of IT, the siloing off of data. It's not always been that way.
It's such a great point, because I think more than ever I've heard people say, yes, business strategy and data strategy should be tied together.
Yep.
Then you go like, what is your business strategy and data strategy? There are a few people that know it, but the communication around business and data strategy is not where it is. So I think we have a role to play
100%.
to pull that out and pull that back to the work and make it part of the program.
Well, and data literacy around data strategy is, you don't have to build the strategy. You could be helping it, obviously. What is data governance? Well, let's teach you what that is and all that. But it's also guiding them to understand, I think, and I've lost my train of thought a little, so hopefully this is the route I was going. But data literacy around data strategy should be, why do we tie it to the business? Like I asked at the conference we were at this week, how many of you have like a fully executing data strategy? I don't know if I had one person raise their hand. We were at a data event.
Yes.
And they don't even know this.
Yeah.
So then it becomes, okay, well, let's take a step back. Do you have a business strategy? Well, yeah. Do you know that? Well, I have a good idea of that. Well, then you have a data strategy. Just formalize it.
Yeah.
Because if you know what that business strategy is, if you are doing anything with your data that is not tying back in some way to the business, stop doing it, right? Because then you're just wasting time. If you cannot tie it back, start over. So I think that what the data literacy with the data strategy can be this. It's teaching people, how does data get used to help businesses succeed? And for senior leaders, they know they want data. Right now, it's all about AI. And there's a lot of hype around AI. So how do we use AI right? Teach them these things. Because without doing that, you could be starting right back from where we always are. And data is seen as this thing over in the corner that people aren't the happiest with.
So Jordan, at the conference, you spoke about, just leveraging on this AI hype, right?
Yeah.
And there's also the element of where you are on the Gartner BI maturity scale, right? But you mentioned that AI can be applied at all stages
absolutely.
of that maturity. I don't know if you want to just maybe dig into that a little bit.
So we were talking, I think it was last night, where does data literacy sit for AI? And it became more important with the advent of AI, because AI will be able to do some of the technical work, right? It'll be able to build some of the visualizations. It can build and give you insights. It can build predictions. It can tell you what to do with prescriptive. But do we have a workforce who knows how to apply what the AI is doing to use cases? That's where you get rid of the hype, right? Is you apply AI in use cases. Yeah. And so across, you should, like when you think of a fully mature, developed data world, you have all 4 levels operating in that business. AI is going to make it so we don't need as many technical people. But you better have a workforce that can read, work with, analyze, and communicate with data and AI. All 4 characteristics are the same. They're just evolving at this point in a powerful way. And so for me, it's like, awesome. You've invested in AI. Show me what you're doing with it. Oh, we're only using a little bit. Well, okay, so let's take a step back. Before you invest in AI, figure out the maturity of your organization, figure out the literacy of your organization, figure out the quality of your data. If those things are not in a position, you can be investigating AI, but please don't spend on it yet, or you might cause frustration. Spend on the training, spend on the data governance, spend on these things so that the moment you find the right use case to begin with AI, boom, the literacy is at a point that they can utilize it appropriately. And so AI is wonderful in the sense that it can enhance an individual not having to become a data scientist, but you better be able to interpret it, you better be able to evaluate it, prompt it, and maybe most importantly, you better be able to then take that and execute decisions with it. That's the most important, is can you evaluate it to understand it, but then do you know how to take it and make a decision with it?
So the last time we met, the definition of data literacy: reading, working with, analyzing, communicating with data. Still valid, and I suppose we are seeing convergence of quite a few things coming together. Particularly, AI is going to touch everything, including data and the way that humans interact with data. You sort of intonated to the balance of those 4 pillars. It will change, and perhaps even the definition of those pillars. For example, communicating with data will add new dimensions. For example, effective prompting. Arguing with your data. Is this hallucination? Have you validated this data against another source? Are you a trained, valid human in the loop?
It's gotten bigger. Those 4 characteristics, and I think that's what it should do, right? The data literacy journey I've been on officially started at Click in June 2016, I think, is when I started there. And here we are, over 8 years later. The definition even changed. You remember the original 4th characteristic was argue with data. Well, we shifted that to communicate with data, right? I think all 4 characteristics still matter, but the definition can evolve, right? You still, until AI, quote unquote, fully takes over all these processes, you're still reading, working with, analyzing, and communicating with data. But now you're doing those 4 different things with AI too. And how do you, and again, the end game is what business outcomes are you driving? Do you know how to execute a decision with this? It's a fascinating thing, and I think that's how data literacy needs to evolve. If we're not evolving our thought processes, good luck. You're going to be stuck in the past. We're still taking horse and buggy.
AI, there's a bit of a trend there. I would argue that data and analytics is dead. Long live AI. We're no longer going to need to work with data as humans. AI is going to do it all for us. We're going to ask it questions, and it's going to bring back the answers. It's going to be wonderful. What would you say to that?
Oh, well, I don't agree, but I do to an extent and I don't, right? Like, data feeds AI. The better your data feeding it, the better the AI. Now, that being said, it's almost as it's just the next evolution in data itself, right? And that evolution is, go back 50, 100 years. What did computers look like? Oh, that'd fill a room, right? Well, then it got better. And you're no longer manually writing data. Now you can code data. Well, and then you get to even better coding of data. And then you get to the cloud. And now you're getting to the point that AI can build the visualizations and AI can do the analytics. The human still needs to be involved. And I think that is one thing throughout the decades that hasn't changed, is the human is still there. But what has changed is where the human sits in it. So give it 20 years ago, you have statisticians, right? Eventually the data scientist terminology came along, and they're the more advanced data professionals. But they make up a small percentage of the population, a very small percentage. So data literacy comes along, and that's the masses. Well, now data literacy takes it to that next level with AI, where AI will do a lot of the work, but you have to have the human. Is the human creating the story based off of what the AI gave us? Is the human able to interpret it? Is the human able to pick up on hallucination? Is the human able to execute a decision off of it? So we're just seeing that next iteration. And that's a term that should be very familiar in data and analytics, is iterative. And so I just think we're at that next evolution.
So Jordan, I've got a question for you on this topic, because as you know, with the curriculum that we come forward and train on, and our exposure and connection to our customers, within our data, we're finding that more than 65% of our audience, both either assessed or trained, are quite unfamiliar with 2 of the 4 levels of analytics, right? So you've got descriptive, you've got diagnostic, and that's where most organizations have, by now, hopefully become quite mature. But what's missing is predictive and prescriptive. So with the advent of AI, if we're saying data literacy and AI have a space together, do you feel there's going to be an increase in pace on being able to deliver potential solutions, leveraging an area now that's quite unfamiliar to most of our audience, right? That prescriptive or predictive space. Where do you feel we're moving towards? Where traditionally, that's a very IT-driven space. You have to hire a data scientist or someone that's incredibly good with the BI tool or knowledgeable around that space. How do you find that shift, or what is your perception around that shift for the future for our audience, which is business people?
I think the first thing we have to help business people understand is they're better with predictive and prescriptive analytics without even knowing it. Because they're thinking of it from a very probably technical business perspective. But I use my weather app analogy all the time, right? The weather app says the weather, I traveled from the States to South Africa. What's the temperature going to be? Is it going to be rainy? Is it not going to be rainy? I am building a predictive decision-making process to say, I better pack these clothes. And so we're building predictions in our lives often. Like I've got 5 children. Think about, if I motivate them this way, what's going to occur? Oh, it didn't work. I got to shift. That's a prediction that I made myself. And I think people need to start framing things different. This siloing off of data and the 4 levels of analytics in IT needs to stop. Absolutely. And people need to understand we do this stuff all the time. Like the example I use for prescriptive analytics is like getting a prescription from a doctor. It's fixing something from an external source. Just apply that in the business setting. The AI is building a prescription of what should be done. You're still evaluating it. Imagine taking a medication. Prime example within my life is my mom has been battling cancer this year. The medication harmed her eventually. They've cut the medication. So it was a prescriptive thing, but they had to assess it and they figured out we have to change this or it wasn't very good. So we have these examples all the time. We need to do a better job of redefining it, not siloing it off. Now, that being said, yes, from a technical perspective, the AI is going to be able to shoot you predictions and prescriptions and all of this, and descriptive and diagnostic. This is why data literacy matters. Do I know maybe the foundations of how that prediction came to be? Do I know how to apply it? Do I then know how to prompt the AI 3 months down the road to say, evaluate this? And then do I know how to iterate on it or allow the AI to iterate and make a new decision? So I think that, yes, it's going to make life easier from the technical, but we just need everybody to understand we do these things automatically. It's not like data literacy. We just put a term to it already. It's probably been around for centuries, right? I eat this berry, I don't die. I eat this berry, oh crap, I'm dead. So that's data literacy. Do we view it that way? No, it was just something that our ancestors had to figure out.
Yeah.
So I think that part of it is the change in mindset of what this really means. Allowing people to not be fearful of all these things, but figure out how they can apply it in their career, their business, their lives, whatever it is.
That's very interesting in terms of, like we've said before in the session, of how you take your business objectives and whether or not you're fulfilling that through data means that you do actually, without defining it, have a data strategy. And so, again, taking that to a new perspective of what's to come with AI, where do you begin? You have to have structure towards which tools will benefit those decisions being made. If we're taking some of the technical away and allowing the end user to have these soft cost improvements on time and energy and efficiency, where do you start? There's so many tools out there. What have you seen in the world from that perspective of saying, where do I begin? You want to jump in head first, and this is expensive technology. If you get it wrong, you're costing the bottom line, right? So what is your advice to organizations out there when it comes to, and let's assume governance is in place, data quality is in place, and a data literacy program is active? Where do you actually put your feet into the water to test or to begin that AI literacy journey?
I look at use cases is the exact point. Do not start with a tool. Start with principles, right? So for example, where I started for our first generative AI proof of concept at the company I work for was, what if we put generative AI on our documentation around RFPs, request for proposal? We have so much documentation. We put a Gen AI model on top of it. And one example, a gentleman I worked with said, answering 75 to 100 questions in RFP could take 15 hours. Now it takes him 2. 13 hours of productivity that is now open for creativity, strategic thinking. So number one is find use cases. If you don't know where to start on use cases, go ask a senior leader, what are your top 3 priorities over the next 6 months? Those are the top 3 priorities. Then literally go out to Google or a ChatGPT and say, what AI tools do this? Then actually start demoing them and start saying, another way you can find proof points and use cases is in one of those priorities, ask that senior leader, what is the biggest pain point you have with this? There's pain behind these things. It's a challenge to do this. It's a challenge to do that. Are there AI tools to overcome this? So we're not boiling the ocean. We're not looking at everything. We're not overwhelmed. We're now saying, are there solutions to do this? Then in coupling with that, the literacy side is saying, okay, what skills would be necessary for more people to be able to do this? So then you're getting a not a one size fits all. You're finding an avenue for building a literacy program. You're finding an avenue for AI use cases, and you just start going. The key is don't hesitate. Like people might sit here and say, our data's not ready in this. All right, well, that's fine. In parallel that you're studying these pain points, be working on your data. And so it's when you break it down, it's less overwhelming. And so, but people don't know how to break it down. So hopefully that gave some frameworks on how to do that.
Very good advice. And I think also it just highlights how if you do get into that AI space early, it may highlight areas within your data that you have been overlooking from a data quality and governance point of view. It doesn't stop you, but it certainly does promote looking at that pain point again and improving the quality of data as both move forward potentially.
And I'm going to say, when you're looking at AI tools, make sure you keep in mind, can this tool do other things too? Or is it, if you get to one use case, that could be getting very expensive because then you're buying a new tool or whatever.
Per use case, yeah.
Like for the use case I described at the company I work for, they've got machine learning, forecasting, and there's like 20 or 30 things, not just a generative model. So how can I take that tool in an umbrella fashion and say, here's Gen AI solutions. These are my use cases. Here's the machine learning solutions. These are my use cases. So you're getting an economy of scale, so your investment goes further, and the CFO is going to like that.
At this point, one of the upsides of AI is it's made data quality and data governance hot again. Like you saw with data science, a lot of those projects failed because the data simply didn't support it, but we didn't see a big support from executive to go, all right, guys, let's support the data scientists and get their data right. Let's start a data quality governance
Hence why
program.
data engineers became something, right?
But now with the AI, we see top down to go, whatever it takes to get this program off the ground, get it done. This is a big game changer. This is going to transform industries and businesses. So get the data sorted, get the governance in place. So it's helping the whole data ecosystem, I think.
Agreed.
When we were all young men early in our careers and sitting in a job interview, one of the questions they would ask is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Yeah.
That's been blown out of the water, we know, right? So the question I'm posing is, in the short term, let's say we're sitting in September 2024, where do you see 2025 in the context of the data literacy and AI and this maturing world we're working in, bringing these technologies, where do you see that playing out in sort of during 2025?
It's interesting. So I'm going to take it from this perspective to start. I want people in 2025 to focus on principles, not technology, right? If we focus on technology, what ChatGPT are we on now? We're on 0.1, which is the reasoning one. It was just 4.0. You're going to see Anthropic and all these models come to be. If you focus on the technology, you could be bypassed, right? I just learned how to use 4.0 well. Now they're on 7.0. I got to start over. Versus, I want you to focus in 2025 on the principles behind it, right? When you focus on principles, the tools and technology become a part of how you apply the principle. Versus if you focus on technology, the principles might not matter. So, but again, what I would say is I see 2025. I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I'd bet on the market and retire quickly, right? But what I would say is we are going to see more evolution in AI next year that could really transform even more. ChatGPT and OpenAI just launched a reasoning AI that can reason. And I believe it thinks at the PhD level. So we're now beyond what a lot of us can do. And so what we need to be doing again next year is Number one, adapting our data literacy initiatives to focus on principles that can then be applied against technology. Number two, every data literacy initiative in some way, shape, or form to a degree may want to invest in what learning do we have to stay on top of trends, right? Because now you've got the four characteristics. What are we doing to stay on top of trends as best we can? You can't stay on top of all of them. There's just too much. So for our business, what do we need to stay on top of? An interesting one from a skill set perspective in talent management is I'm wondering how many organizations will not be hiring for full-time roles versus hiring for direct skills, right? Instead of hiring for a marketing manager, you're hiring for XYZ skills in data and AI, and then it becomes a plug and play. And so then how can we design data literacy initiatives to empower people in their job searches to say, I'm empowered because I can do this and this and apply it across these industries. So it's a very dynamic space right now.
Very exciting.
Point there, because that would be one of the downsides potentially of AI is these efficiency gains. People are going to lose jobs.
Yeah.
And so right now in the workforce, you need to be thinking, what kind of skills do I need to arm myself with to be a worker of the future, to be the digitally savvy worker? And the organizations need to be thinking, how do I reskill my workforce to be able to utilize these technologies? I think you still need a basic knowledge and expert knowledge in law, in marketing, in manufacturing, but you also now need to have another layer of digital skills to say, how do I utilize the data? How do I interact with these specialized narrow AI systems that's going to help me supercharge my job? And people will win, organizations will win. And I think people who don't move, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot losers soon.
We were in that presentation at the conference. We're seeing, so the story is in 2012, we were sat in a POC demonstration type meeting with a customer. One of the people from the customer side said, can we perform analysis on PDF documents? And the answer was like, no. 3 days ago, we were demonstrated how the use of AI on top of PDF documents can extrapolate that data very quickly with a little bit of guidance, and then pull that data out of PDF documents, publish that into table structures and data structures that we know, and instantly you can now start performing the analysis. Opens up a whole new world.
Yeah.
Right? So that's like one of the exciting areas, seeing AI applied, of where you can actually start utilizing it. As in, that's a use case, maybe.
Yes, it absolutely is. Yeah. And one of the things that data and AI literacy can do is eliminate fear, right? Because you said job loss. Yes, industrial revolutions lead to job changes. Jobs are created, jobs are lost. What if we empower people through data and AI literacy to be indispensable, right? That is a term that I've used in the sense that, no, you cannot, unless you own your own business, and it's still not even safe at that point, because what if the market turns and you lose your business? But what if you develop skills so that you are a desired employee and you're eliminating fear because you know how to use these things? Data and AI literacy can do that, and it can empower you to be more indispensable to your organization. And if we teach that, hopefully we're lowering fear and we're putting people on a journey to success.
So, my follow-up question. As you know, with the work that we do as a data literacy provider in Africa and all of the customers that we've worked with, is our main goal is to make people empowered through knowledge and skill sets in order to become better at what they do. And the reason why I was going to smile like a Cheshire cat, if I pronounce that correctly, was, do you agree that organizations need to find a balance between fear and FOMO, the fear of missing out? We need to find how to leverage how technology can drastically change your organization for the good. But that's coupled to, again, education, knowledge, skills, experience, and an ongoing data culture. It's not something that we execute in January and we walk away and say, well, that's done for the year. This is going to be, from our point of view, and you've reinforced this, an ongoing thing for organizations in the modern day. It has to be a culture of ongoing activity.
100%.
I was just smiling ear to ear when you were saying the words fear and how do we shift that perception.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up the term FOMO. I hate to say it in this sort of cynical way. The companies that don't do something could be gone. I mean, it's not only a fear of missing out, it should be a fear of annihilation. Now, that's that scary side. But when you go through education, you go through innovation, you go through development, you go through structure, hopefully you're preventing it. And so it's the interesting thing is the acceleration of innovation is fast, right? So what are we doing to combat that? It's education, it's taking the time to study, it's innovation, it's shifting if needed, right? Netflix, the big streaming giant. Do you know how it started? At least in the States? Mail-in DVD rentals. You'd put online, you'd pick your DVD, they send it to you. When you're done with it, you send it back. Your next one on your list, if it's available, gets sent to you. Right? Now it's a streaming giant, right? Innovation and changing with the times, right? And I'm not sure about in South Africa. I'm sure there are examples of businesses that didn't innovate that are no longer around. Blockbuster Video, if you've heard of that in the States, how many people go to Blockbuster anymore?
Kodak, good example.
Kodak, prime example.
Yeah.
And as I recall, they invented the digital camera, and it was like, nah, BlackBerry, right? And they wanted to keep, I believe one of the founders just wanted the keyboard. And I think he thought it was stupid that you had a touchscreen keyboard that wasn't always there. Who won?
Yeah.
You know, but that's why you need the literacy and the education to see and come back to emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Am I humble enough to say my ideas that have worked for 10 years no longer do? What do we need to do? If we put that tent pole in the ground and we don't move, that might be why you struggle.
Yeah, and it's a great point, that example of Netflix, because what they did really well is there's a basic need, which was people wanted to have access to entertainment DVDs. But they truly digitally transformed. The need stayed the same, but they didn't just layer a digital process on top of getting the DVD to someone. They transformed their delivery model. They used the technology effectively. The commercial model used data for predictive. What program would you also like because you watch this particular program? So they really applied proper digital transformation through the use of data.
And there was a humility to them. Because when streaming came to be, if I remember at the price point, didn't change. Then they changed it and they doubled it. And I think we canceled and it might have almost put them out of business. Don't quote me on that. You'd have to study it until they had the awareness to shift or whatever. Because it was, DVDs, now you can have streaming for free. I think it was a pure double of the price. And you're like, I don't want to double my price, so I'm out. And then there's the awareness, and then they weaned away the DVDs and went to streaming. And so not only was it the digital transformation, adoption, and innovating, but there was a self-awareness of, oh crap, we screwed up.
Yeah.
And how do we shift this and to regain it? Now, Netflix is probably the giant out of all of them. And you've had other organizations, Amazon Prime, I think it's Showmax here, HBO Max in the States, follow suit. Even the great Disney came up with Disney Plus, right?
And that's the exciting opportunity for everybody, is the fact that there's going to be so many transformations.
Yeah.
Because it becomes a confluence and a tipping point, confluence of multiple technologies, mobile technologies, broadband, internet, great digital screens, and all of those things put Netflix past the tipping point. And all of a sudden, it was an affordable, quality, go anywhere viewing experience. And the model has changed forever. In every organization, there's those transformational options now. AI, robotics, automation. These things are coming at us, and the people within the organization that can combine those skills, keep the customer in the center of it, and reimagine those business models, there's going to be lots of room for new exciting jobs and ways to apply this.
And I would say, don't try and do everything. You're going to spread yourself too thin. What is your company good at? Use data to figure that out. What are you really good at? Where's your niche? Innovate with it, and maybe it turns you in a totally different direction. And that's great. But then harness there's so many opportunities that could come to be. But you have to have the literacy, you have to have the trends, the innovation. You take content and courses from you guys, because now you're learning how to be innovative versus just sitting back and watching everything pass you by. The only time that's good is being on a safari and you watch the animals pass you by versus them coming at you.
We talk about investing in these new technologies. Don't go and buy a big platform. But what I almost feel you have to do is get a couple of key people
Yeah.
in the organization with different sets of skills, some marketing, some technology, some data skills, and put them into little target teams and go, we want to investigate this use case. The organization wants to offer our insurance policy, through whatever mobile agents. How do we do that? What are some of those ideas? And get going. Just try something, learn the skills, find out where the gaps are.
I come back to use cases and your strategy, right? Because use cases, again, find pain. Where is your organization's productivity in trouble? Where is their pain? Can I find something that solves that frees it up? Then that allows those 3 C's, curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking, to start attacking something different. Like that gentleman that went from 15 hours to 2 hours. That's 13 hours of productivity that can target that RFP in a creative way versus just, standard answers, there you go, versus, well, we can do this now and do that and do this. Use curiosity, use creativity, use critical thinking with your freed up time that allows you to really attack things in a better way. But don't be overwhelmed by everything that you hear around you. The media is going to have clickbait. It's going to have all these things that are doing it. Boil it down to what's your strategy, then go.
Dylan, I think it's been a privilege and a pleasure spending time with you again, as we did last year. I look forward to our partnership growing and evolving as this AI world is going to evolve, as the data literacy needs of our customers evolve, and it's just great to see you again and be able to have a conversation.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'll just always say go Springboks.
Yeah. Bon voyage.